Hey Mia, I was thinking we could take a journey through time today. Not just any journey. How about we explore the entire history of Earth? Sound fun?
Wow, the whole history of Earth? That sounds huge, but I'm in. So where do we start? How did Earth even begin?
All right, buckle up. Earth started forming about 4.5 billion years ago. Back then, there was this massive cloud of gas and dust floating around in space, left over after the sun formed. Gravity did its thing and started pulling all that material together into a big, hot, spinning ball that eventually became our planet.
4.5 billion years ago? I can't even imagine that. Was it just a big fiery ball of nothing?
Pretty much. In the beginning, Earth was super hot, with a surface covered in molten rock and lava. There was no air to breathe, no water, and definitely no life. It was a pretty hostile place.
Sounds like somewhere you'd never want to visit. So how did it go from that to, well, this?
Over time, Earth started to cool down. Volcanoes were erupting constantly, releasing gases like water vapor, carbon dioxide, and nitrogen, which eventually formed the early atmosphere. As the planet cooled further, the water vapor condensed and fell as rain, leading to the formation of oceans.
Wait, so it rained for the first time? That must have been a huge storm. And then, did life just appear in the ocean?
It was definitely a massive storm, more like millions of years of rain. But yes, life began in those oceans. The first life forms were tiny single-celled organisms called prokaryotes, which appeared around 3.8 billion years ago. These little guys were basically bacteria and were the only life on Earth for a long time.
Just bacteria? That's kind of boring, isn't it?
I get what you mean, but those tiny bacteria were pioneers. They eventually figured out how to use sunlight to make their own food through photosynthesis, which produced oxygen. And guess what? That oxygen started to build up in the atmosphere.
Oh, so that's how we got oxygen. But it still sounds like a pretty lonely place with just bacteria floating around. When did things start getting more interesting?
Things got a lot more interesting about 2 billion years ago when some of those simple cells started to evolve into more complex ones, cells with a nucleus. This was a big deal because it allowed for more complicated life forms to develop. Fast forward a billion years, and we see the first multicellular organisms, which eventually led to the first animals about 600 million years ago.
Finally, animals. What did they look like? Were there any fish yet?
Not quite yet. The earliest animals were pretty simple. Think of jellyfish and sponges. Then, during a period called the Cambrian explosion, around 540 million years ago, life really took off. This is when a lot of the major groups of animals we know today, like arthropods and mollusks, started to appear. And yes, this is when the first fish appeared too.
So the oceans were like this crazy alien world with all these new creatures swimming around. What happened next? Did any of them move onto land?
Exactly. About 450 million years ago, some plants and fungi started to grow on land. Then, around 370 million years ago, the first vertebrates, animals with backbones, crawled out of the water. These were the early amphibians, and they eventually gave rise to reptiles.
So, like, the great-great-grandparents of dinosaurs? What were they like?
Kind of. These early reptiles were small and scaly, but over millions of years, they evolved into the giant dinosaurs that roamed the Earth about 230 million years ago. Dinosaurs were the dominant creatures for a long time.
Dinosaurs are so cool. But they didn't last forever, right? What wiped them out?
Unfortunately, about 66 million years ago, a massive asteroid hit Earth, causing a huge extinction event. It wiped out the dinosaurs, along with about 75% of all species on the planet. But this disaster also paved the way for mammals to rise and evolve into all sorts of new creatures, including us.
So we kind of owe our existence to that asteroid? That's wild. But when did humans actually show up?
Humans, or more accurately, our early ancestors, started to appear about 6 million years ago. The first modern humans, Homo sapiens, emerged around 300,000 years ago. We're relatively new to the scene, but we've been making our mark ever since.
Wow. So Earth went from being a fiery ball to a watery world with just bacteria to this whole parade of life that eventually led to us. That's a lot to take in.
It really is. Earth's history is like this epic ongoing story full of twists and turns, and who knows what the next chapter will bring.
I hope it's a good one with less asteroids. Thanks, Dad. This was really cool. I've got a lot to think about now.
Anytime, Mia. The story of Earth is one of my favorites to share. There's always something new to learn.